This time we're going to be talking about some limited series. So we are going to start out with KJ Steinberg, the executive producer and showrunner of The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox. Hi. How are you? I'm sitting the furthest one. You're good. Yep. All the way. Not on the couch. You're good. Yeah, right there. Next up, we have Patrick Macmanus, creator, showrunner, executive producer, and director of Devil in Disguise, John Wayne Gacy. Add a director thrown in there. You hear that? Hear that? Michael D. Fuller, executive producer, showrunner, of Murdaugh, Death in the Family. Out here. Where are ya? And last but not least, Zach Baylin and Kate Susman, creators, executive producers, and writers, Black Rabbit. Hey, guys. Hi. Have a seat. You guys can get comfy.
All right, there we go.
As much as you want. All right. How's everyone feeling? Are you guys good?
Yeah.
You guys feeling good? All right. There's so many different stories out here, and some of them are a bit dark, but we're going to make this as fun as possible, talking about some very dark things. Zach and Kate, I want to start with you guys because you are the non-true crime of this panel, but crime for sure. I want to ask you a little bit about kind of shaping this when it started, especially this dynamic between these brothers and what the process of where you guys started with that, where that started.
I mean, we sort of started from two different places. That Kate and I lived in New York for a very long time, so there were sort of two entry points, I think, for us for the show. One was this restaurant world, which maybe you can talk a bit about, but the other part was this relationship between these two brothers who, Kate and I both have siblings, we're married, so we've shared a lot.
We know about tough family dynamics.
Yeah. So we were talking a lot about particularly my relationship with my brother, and there were a lot of things that I think we're interested in trying to finally mine some personal stories with. And so, but we talked quite a bit about like what the initial audience introduction to their relationship would be, that for those of you who've seen the show, Jason comes in as this character Vince, who is like a real atom bomb into the life of his brother, and that the introduction for the audience to that is that this is kind of the way this dynamic works in the family, and that slowly you begin to understand that Jude's character Jake is also carrying a lot of baggage. He just doesn't quite wear it as nakedly as Vince does, and that was gonna, over the course of the show, was gonna sort of like topple over in the way we understood what their dynamic was. And so that was something that we talked about from the beginning.
Yeah, and then we, like Zach said, we had lived in New York for a really long time, and restaurants were such like a central feature of our social life there. Like living in New York, everyone has super tiny apartments, and so most of your life happens outside of your apartment. And we're just really fascinated with this idea of like a restaurant as kind of a clubhouse and sort of like a theater, like the show that goes on every night in restaurants, and then kind of the opposite, or like what happens when the lights are on and you're kind of seeing what actually happens in those spaces. And there was a number of places that we went to and kind of watched as they had sort of big falls from graces, like another number of restaurants in downtown and that we had gone to had sort of big scandals that kind of spilled out all over Page Six and all over the New York media. And we thought this was like a really rich world to explore, kind of the idea of putting on a face to sort of cover up what's actually happening under the surface. So that was sort of where the idea started.
Amazing. Family is such a through line on a lot of these shows. Michael, obviously, it's in your title, so
yes, it's baked in.
Yeah, it's baked right in. The Murdaugh case was probably, I think, definitely the most recent, and it was very, very highly covered. There were a lot of eyes on it.
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah, a little bit. What was the biggest challenge for you when doing that, when taking that on, knowing that there's a lot of people who already view themselves as experts? And
yeah, I mean, I think that's that's the challenge, especially for it's such a zeitgeisty case, and it has been explored in so many ways already. I think the thing for me and for us as we were diving in is really like, what can we do that other explorations of this haven't done? And it's really for us, and it's and I sit here with Patrick and KJ, who did it brilliantly in their series too, but it's this space between people. It's the emotionality of what's it like at the kitchen table for the families that were ripped off by Alec Murdaugh, or what's it like at the kitchen table for the Murdaughs themselves as these things are unfolding. So I think that was really sort of the North Star is like, how can we tell the emotional truth of this in a way that it hasn't been explored, and break it out of that prism of here's the crime, here's the victim, here's the perpetrator, and it's like, okay, those things are going to happen. Those are baked in, to repeat my phrasing, those are baked into the story itself. So then let's break out of that, and then let's get to know these people as people first and foremost, because those things are going to come.
Definitely. Were you hesitant at all to dive into this because of the mass media around it already?
I mean, not really, because I think for one thing, that shows there's a huge appetite for it. That's so true. I try to do the positive reframing of there's a big appetite out there already, and I think there's so much to draw on, but there was also, it is the benefit that we had is we had the most hindsight of any exploration, and the most had come out because we were post the trial and all of that for people who know the story, but there's so much detail and complexity to this that even within all those explorations had not been explored. And so I think that felt like the opportunity to do that and kind of try to humanize the people involved and not just have them be talking heads and CGI reenactments of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Patrick, for you, I know it's a little different. You were a little bit hesitant to take this on, if we could, a little bit. Can you talk a little about that decision to tell this and the angle you told it in?
Yeah, of course. I keep saying that I turned it down twice. I did not want to do it in any way, shape, or form. And yeah. I mean, okay, I'm done.
Somehow I'm here now.
Yeah, and somehow I got shuffled back here. I don't know how it happened. I turned it down because I didn't want to do another serial killer show. I just didn't think it was necessary. And when Universal Content, which is where I work, and Peacock came to me the third time, I called their bluff, and I said, okay, I'll do it, but I'll do it only if I can focus on the victims' families, the cops, and the lawyers. And they said yes, and I went, shoot. I didn't think you were doing it, because I didn't actually know what any of that meant. I just knew that it was like, I knew that it sounded right. But I will say that very quickly, we realized as we got into the writer's room in particular, that it was, I keep saying to people that I didn't set out to make something special, but it became something really special. And it was a lot because of the writers. These are writers that I've worked with, some of them for 13, 14 years and on down, and just by happenstance, they're predominantly queer writers. And the number of stories that I was listening, these people that I'd known for years, that I've loved, that I've eaten dinners with and over the years, and I didn't know them. And in this process of breaking the story, where we're really looking into the systemic failure that allowed Gacy to get away with it. I mean, Gacy is really a sub-character in the show, even though it's baked in the title, which is a challenging marketing ploy. But it became something more, and it revealed its relevancy. Because even though it was a story about 1978, I was listening to these stories of our writers who were struggling with their identities and how cultures and religions and families and education and society as a general just kept up as barriers to them living their true lives. And quite a bit of those same prejudices and biases, I know I'm preaching definitely to the converted here, are the same prejudices and biases that are driving violence in our communities now, but it's just supercharged by social media and the internet. And so anybody who watches our show and thinks that it's somehow this thing that happened in the 1970s and isn't absolutely relevant today, you're missing the point. And so I will say that I'm extraordinarily proud of the writers in particular. I'm proud of everybody, but the writers in particular, because they really bled every day on the page, and you can feel it in every single scene. You can feel that it's their story, even though it's a story of these victims.
Absolutely. I told you we were going to keep this one fun, guys. I
tried.
it was
Yeah.
excellent. I'm obviously kidding. It was excellent. KJ, in the same kind of vein, obviously the story of Amanda Knox has been told. People think they know the story. They've been following it for many years. What made you want to work with Amanda on this and create this show and this retelling?
Yeah, her involvement in the project set it apart from the beginning, as well as Monica Lewinsky's. Monica is an extraordinary, extraordinary woman. And Monica and Amanda are, unfortunately for them, in a really exclusive club of having been ripped apart by big media, and in turn, us as a culture and society, in imbibing all of that big media, all the caricatures of them, and then digesting it and amplifying it to our friends and neighbors for years and years. And Monica always, reminds me the echoes of trauma are loud and long. This isn't fun. This isn't what she promised.
The ray of sunshine.
Yeah. So the auspices were there, right? There's Amanda, who has had her story ripped literally from her vocal cords and told, for her time and time and time again. And Monica, being the integrous person that she is, I knew that the project was going to be something special just by virtue of their involvement. And then, her story is so polarizing. But she, as a person, was so polarizing. She was a baby. She was 20 years old. She was a child just going off on this romantic adventure, going off to study abroad, to find herself, to find her sexuality, to find her identity. And, less than 6 weeks later, her identity was rewritten for her. It was because people had such polarizing opinions about her, and I didn't, that I felt really drawn to it. I was like, there's something here that feels really current. We're in our political and cultural discourse. Everybody's standing in their corner, right? So rigid. And the heat is so turned up in our public discourse. And I thought, maybe there's a microcosm of something in her, in her story that we can look at and say, why are people standing so strongly and so firmly in their beliefs about something they probably don't know that much about, right? And how can we tell the story in a way to make people go, I didn't know it that way. I thought I knew it, but I didn't know it that way, and maybe I'll move just an inch closer to the other side of the argument.
Absolutely. Zach and Kate, I want to ask you guys about something that they were kind of just talking about. We're at a complicated time for many. When you're creating a show that is a crime thriller, there is some, I would say, laugh out loud moments because of the two of them, I would say. But when you're creating that and there is this darkness, how do you, what makes you want to create a show at the time we're in now that is a little bit darker? I mean, I think that's something that any of you can talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I know we didn't set up to create something explicitly dark. I mean, I think we knew we were telling a tragedy that was always meant to be a family tragedy between brothers. But I think, the darkness in the two of the characters and the, cascading bad decisions that they made, I think we tried to approach, and we feel that they're pretty grounded characters. And I think for most of the time, we hope that the audience, and we feel strongly, are kind of on sides with these brothers, and you can kind of see perhaps where a bad decision turns into a worse decision, turns into a worse decision, turns into a worse decision. But we didn't want to make a show that at any point felt unrelatable. So though things do get very dark and there's some really, horrible things happening behind the scenes, we wanted the audience to feel like these were people you could identify with, and potentially even choices that you could identify with. So that was important to us.
Yeah, and I would say we also looked a lot about how trauma affects people later in life, and so as the show goes, you continue to sort of unpack the household that these brothers grew up in, and if not sort of empathize with the choices they make, maybe understand the situations that led them to being in those situations. And I think that was sort of interesting to us, to like that you meet people in life that you have no idea what the context of their lives were, and that it's very easy to be incredibly judgmental about the way in which people act and the decisions they make without understanding what they've been through. And I think that sort of our approach was to try and to backfill some of that story of their relationship and how their bonds became as both tied and fractured as they were, and to sort of show that to the audience later, and to it is challenging in a way, I think, for an audience to watch. But I also, I think we felt like we wanted to try and do something that felt, human, and maybe it was going to be difficult. But I also
There's hope. There's hope in it too. I mean,
we also found it a lot of
100%.
Yeah.
like we think the show's kind of funny.
That's what I mean. It's definitely funny. And then I was like, am I supposed to be laughing when I was laughing? So I think that's a great thing. Michael, I mean, we were talking a little bit about it, that sometimes these shows kind of do sometimes come into a comfort for some reason. And in the writer's room, it's lighter. It's not a dark writer's room, as some people would assume.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have friends who are comedy writers. I have people I've worked with who've become friends who came from the comedy world into the scripted comedy, into scripted drama, and they usually say, like, I've had more fun in this room in one day than I had on the entire 4-season run of a comedy show they were on. And I think some of that is that's just necessary to cope, with the very dark subject matter and that you're dealing with. I mean, the first show I ever worked on was a show called Rectify that was on Sundance Channel, and it was myself, the creator, Team Rectify, Ray McKinnon, the brilliant creator and showrunner, my writing partner at the time, and our writer assistant, and we were in a unused Walking Dead editing suite. There were no windows in the place. They just weren't in production at the time. And it was the four of us, including our writer's assistant, sitting in the room talking about murder and death row every day, all day. And, we talked to Damien Eccles and on the phone, and it's like, we're like, okay, well, where's sunlight? Oh, it's very far away. and so, but in order to survive that, you gotta have some fun with it. And I think the thing that's, you got to have, but out of that, usually it's a fundamental part of the process, I've found, because out of that, both it's a way for people to let down their guard as they're dealing with a lot of these very, dark moments of, and our case, but also in you guys' case, because it's drawn from, obviously real life and real experience, like these very dark subject matters and situations, and then you can really start to get in there and find a way into things that has humanity to it. And also, I just think in general, I mean, it's something I stole from a writing professor years ago, but I put it up in all the rooms, is empathy is a muscle and it needs relief. And I think if everything is just one way, I don't know if anybody's watched Murdaugh yet, but Jason Clarke is Alec Murdaugh, and Alec Murdaugh in real life was really funny and charming. And, you've got to have some of that because things are going to get dark. And I think it's a way to both engage the audience. And then I think in terms of the process itself, it just helps to open it up so then people feel more free to then, really engage with the darker aspects of the story you're telling.
Yeah, absolutely. Patrick, did you want to comment on that? I mean, your writer's room definitely is very fun. I mean, it's a fun group of people, but when you guys have to do kind of the darker, deeper storytelling that is this show, what is the process of kind of focusing on, all right, how are we going to get into this mindset?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Fuller said. We very quickly, quick anecdote early on in the room. Again, these are people I've worked with for years, so we have a relationship. But our writer assistant was brand new to us, and she was in the room late at night doing notes. And the writer's assistant from another show that shared the floor with us came down to ask her what we were working on, and she goes, "Oh, we're doing this." And that writer assistant goes, oh, we were positive this was a half-hour comedy room. And I was like, yeah. I don't, I can't speak for the other writers. I won't do that. I will say I am a master of wasting 7 out of 8 hours in a writer's room, like talking about anything and everything but the work. And then miraculously it gets done, mostly because of my number 2, Ashley Michael Hoban, who's been like she started as my assistant, and she's now an EP and a showrunner in her own right and a director. She directed episode 2 of this. Yeah, she's a badass. And I couldn't do anything without her. But she's usually the one being like, Patrick, Jesus, like, we've been here all day. Like, what are we talking about here? Yeah, let's put something on the board. But yeah, so I can say for me, I see it as a job. And I know I semi-joke that I probably have like a little bit of sociopathy in me, that like I've done these shows for so long. No, unfortunately, it's true, I think. That I just block everything out. And I just do the work. And but I will say that I've been asked this quite a bit on the road, that did it ever get to me? And the only time it got to me was this one. So I was flying back and forth between Toronto and LA every weekend to see my kids and my wife, and I was outside. It was halftime of a very unfortunate Commanders game, and my eldest son and I, who unfortunately I'm a fan of, a terrible name. We were outside having a football catch at halftime, and my son was 13. He's 14 now, and I realized out of nowhere that he was the same age as the youngest victim of Gacy. And it just like, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I excused myself, and I went inside to our powder room, and I just lost it, like completely lost. It was the only time they brought me the show in December of 22. It came out a month ago. It was the only time in those 2.5 years, 3 years that it ever really got to me. Wow. So, yeah.
Oof. I don't know what's sadder, that or the Commanders, to be honest.
There is no good answer to that. I lose either way, so I'm just gonna. KJ, what do you got going on?
Yeah.
What's up?
KJ, I want to talk to you about telling this story about someone who's polarizing with the polarizing person by your side. Can you talk about the collaboration with Amanda and with Grace Van Patten, who beautifully portrayed her, and kind of what that process was like?
Yeah, it was fucked. I mean, it was, but in a great way. I was not certain of anything when I started this project. I certainly was not certain about her innocence.
Wow.
It was a journey for me. I am 100% sure and will stand behind, she is innocent. I did not know that, because I wanted to come to the project as cleanly as I could. And I was not a student of her case. I remember it happening at the time. I remember seeing it in the tabloids in the grocery aisle, but I was just too solipsistic and into my own character development as a young woman trying to find myself. I just didn't give a shit about that. Because it was on the tabloids, it felt like something that I shouldn't take seriously. Cut to it being the most profound and important project of my life that I think that I will ever do. But no, I went to visit her on Vashon Island thinking that she might have done it. I didn't know yet. I had read her memoir. It was beautifully written. It was heartbreaking. And I knew, again, by virtue of Monica Lewinsky's involvement, I was pretty sure of where it was going to come out, but I read thousands and thousands of court documents. I looked at the police files. I looked at crime scene photos. I read the memoirs of Giuliano Menini, her prosecutor, of Rudy Gaudet, the actual killer, Raffaele Sollecito, her then boyfriend of 5 minutes, honestly, and he was dragged into this tragic situation along with her because of the ecosystem that allowed for this grand injustice to happen. And so my journey with her was really, really interesting. I went to Vashon Island to meet her, and she was like, "Come stay with me." I was like, "That's okay." There's one hotel on Vashon Island, and there's no lobby. It's just like a bunch of little cabins, and it was just every night, like, what am I? But if any of you have seen her speak or have had the honor of meeting her, she's an extraordinary person. She is so open. She leads with compassion and empathy, and she doesn't carry herself with the anger that she is so entitled to, given what she's been through. She's really, really very, very bright. She's got a mad intellect, and she knows her story really well and still remains open to learning things about herself. And she learned things. Sam Rubinek and Nate Burke, writers, my brilliant writers, are here tonight. We taught her things about her case. Through our research and through our exploration, we taught her. So what it was, we learned so much from her as well. Let me sort of, brevity's not my strong suit. Let me make this short.
Good.
This is an 8-episode series, this answer. No, this answer. We were really, really close, and then really, really, we had a healthy distance when we needed to, so that we could do the character exploration that we needed to do. But to her credit, she was exceedingly flexible. When we said, Amanda, we really must depict this moment that was kind of scandalous. We must depict this choice that you made in an honest way. She said, I don't want a hagiography. I'm good. Do it. So, here's to her credit.
Wow, it's incredible. The last panel, we started talking about, it became quite a divisive topic of whether you work with an outline or not in the writer's room. Is there anyone on this that does not work with an outline? You all do, or you don't?
Well, wait, at what stage?
Yeah.
You tell me.
For me personally, when I'm writing when I'm the pilot stage, I write the pilot first, and then I do the outline.
For the rest of the season?
Just for that pilot. You have to do outlines because I'm not Taylor Sheridan. So, so they make you do outlines. Yeah, but no, like when I'm just doing my process, but for like the pilot stage, I can't do a blank piece of paper and do an outline. I have to write it out.
We outline in the sense of carding, as a state form of outlining. We do that, and then honestly, I prefer to go from cards to script. But sometimes you have studios or networks who prefer to see an outline stage of things. Outlines are funky documents. I think they're not my preference. If I don't have to do it, I would rather just go to script. But usually it's I'm definitely not Taylor Sheridan. I'm not Patrick Macmanus. So I am just if this is what you guys need, then to feel involved in the process. And it is a good step for them to weigh in on things. But it's just creatively, it's like a carding, which is obviously a form of outlining, but it's great card. And then go from there to script. To me, I feel like we've done it in the cards, and then we'll find it on the page. But yeah.
We were actually talking about this today, like the amount of time spent on outlines, because outlines serve so many different purposes. You outline it to then go sell the story, and then write it, and the amount of an outline is written to be read by someone else, and it's often not even what the intent of whatever you're writing is going to be. And outlines, I think both of us find, can be just so tedious because it's not a fun document to read, so you have to put emotion.
Although I will
turns.
say we got an outline turned in by a writer on our show, Stacey Osekafor, who's an amazing writer.
Yeah,
that we were howling. I mean, to speak to the fun of our show, that we were howling, laughing, reading it.
Yeah.
This is the best document ever.
But it's hard because it's like a sales tool, and so you're really writing an outline to be read and hopefully liked, and then greenlit or going forward. So it's depends on what the function of your outline is, but they take so long to write and are not necessarily the blueprint of what the thing is going to be.
Of course.
Yeah.
KJ, what about you?
Outlines, sure. My favorite thing is about getting dialogue notes from the studio off the outline.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yeah.
So when you guys go to script, can you make sure you go deeper? Yeah, it's an outline. It's a skeleton, and then our studio partners are absolutely amazing, and we're amazing, and they we're so invested. they were so invested in every word. I will say that.
Yeah.
But we carded every episode. We broke it up. We had very detailed cards. Our poor writer's assistant, everything. Very, very detailed cards that got translated into an outline, which got translated into a first draft, and so on and so forth. And we would often go back to the outline, deeper into the script process, to sort of diagnose why something wasn't landing or working.
What did the drama kids say earlier?
It's a secret. No, Brad Inglesby for Task, he did not use an outline. The rest of them did, but he was the sole writer and didn't have a writer's room, so he said he didn't have to, really.
There you go.
A little different.
There you go.
A little different. He's Taylor Sheridan, is what I should have said. That should have been the answer.
I'm gonna hook up with that guy.
He's Philadelphia Taylor Sheridan.
Delco Taylor Sheridan. That's a really great bio. Michael, I wanted to talk to you about changing things, because you did change some things in the Murdaugh story. When it comes to planning out the show, were you nervous to change things because you knew people knew it so well?
I mean, there's always, when you're making a change from a real story, there should be some nervousness about it. Otherwise, I feel like you're probably not the person who should be telling that story. Right. But I think as long as the thing for me and for my writing staff was always, let's start from the place of knowing the truth. Like these stories, they're two incredible series. There is so much. We had the court transcripts. We had so much detail to go into. But then so many other, connections we made throughout the process and doing the research. But it's always knowing why you made the choice and if it makes sense, emotional truth sense. So if we know what the truth is, which is, for example, I don't know who knows the Murdaugh story, but their housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield, she fell on the property, passed away. Then a whole other bunch of shenanigans happened on the other side of that. In truth, that happened a year before the boat crash that is sort of the inciting incident of the story. She was already passed away when the boat crash happened. But in the math I was doing in development that I was doing with my co-creator, Aaron Lee Carr on it, and our executives, it was, okay, we can do this one of two ways because it's important to tell this story, this person's story as meet her as a human and not just through that prism of the accident that took her life. And so then it really became about what do we gain from this? We can either introduce this world and these people and then sort of record scratch it and then reset to a year before and then get to know her. But we already know at that point, wait, this woman died and that's how you're viewing her. Or we can make a change that feels like it works within the story. It helps us, the audience who either knows the story or doesn't, access the importance of her role in the family. She was more than just a housekeeper. She was a second mother, in a lot of ways, a surrogate mother to Paul Murdaugh. And then you can feel what she means within that, and then you can feel the absence of that when she's taken away, rather than just introducing her as, oh, she's the housekeeper that fell, which is how the story unfolded. That was discovered after the boat crash, and it had already happened, obviously. So it's always trying to keep in mind, like, okay, what's the truth, and then what's the story truth, emotional truth, the choice we're making, and do we feel like that's, still keeping true to what happened with, like the emotional dynamics of everyone there. So yeah, but you absolutely have to, there's nerves in it, and you have to make these choices because these stories are so sprawling and there's so many details. You're going to have to streamline things. You're going to have to move things around to make it accessible. But yeah, there's nerves in it. But as long as I felt like as long as we were doing it rooted in emotional truth, then it felt justified.
Definitely. Patrick, was there details that you had to change for storytelling purposes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, similar. I mean, I don't want to, just copy him, although I will because he's very talented. So it's fine. Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you have to condense sometimes is our characters, because if we told every character in the John Wayne Gacy in this story, no one would know what was going on. And so we absolutely had to take character bits and stories from certain characters and give them to another character in order just to streamline their story or the thematic that we were dealing with. The one place that we did our best to stay as true as possible. So I sort of alluded to it in my first answer, but we do these things in John Wayne in Devil in Disguise. They call them short stories. If you haven't seen it yet, we've had a challenge because I think some people who came to our show wanting John Wayne Gacy, the clown serial killer, were disappointed. And I think that there are a lot of people who didn't want to see John Wayne Gacy, the clown serial killer. They didn't know that our show is what it really is. And so we did these short stories in every episode in which we explore the backstories of a select group of the victims, but having no connection to John Wayne Gacy at all. They were literally just stories of their lives. So we had a queer coming out story, we had a hetero love story, we had a sex worker story, we had a grooming story, but it had zero connection to their death. And so with those, we were doing our best to keep it as close as possible to the research that we had. And like everyone else, we had thousands of pages of depositions and testimony, and we had books, and the NBC News team gave us an immense amount of research. And I have a private researcher named Patrick Murphy, who's been with me for a bunch of shows, and he went to Chicago and actually dug through all of the physical evidence, that's still there, up to and including he held, and he sent me a photo of himself holding the photo claim ticket that Kim Byers put into the coat that was Rob Peace's coat that eventually led to Gacy being arrested, and he was holding that in his hand. And so that was the area where we tried to be as true to form as we could. We obviously had to take some liberties, we definitely did, but we tried our best. And with everybody else in the stories, with Gacy, I say this in Michael Chernus, who plays him brilliantly. We're sitting right here. He's like the least interesting part of the story, and he's also the part of the story that we have the most evidence of. So we didn't really have to change very much of him.
Yeah, absolutely. KJ, what about you? I mean, did you guys have to change anything for storytelling purposes?
Shelby, Sam, and Nate scream if I lie. Scream out. I think it must just fictionalized as stylized. It was an interpretation. Like, for instance, Amélie was Amanda Knox's favorite film of all time. It happened to be her alibi the night of poor Meredith Kercher's murder. She was watching it with Raffaele at his apartment, 10 minutes away. And it also was a way into Amanda's worldview. I have found it real. The toughest thing for me to crack was not how to shape the court documents and the police depositions and all of the factual stuff into a narrative. It was how to communicate to the audience who this very interesting girl was, this very enigmatic, people thought she was quite eccentric figure, and it was getting inside of her and her experience and her worldview that was the biggest challenge. And I think that's where fictionalizing happened, which was just using Amélie. I don't know if any of you've seen the film. It's magical realism. Amélie, as a young woman, she had a very active and colorful fantasy life. She was naive. She was charmingly willful, wanting people to have connections where they might not have, and wanting things to be beautiful where they were ugly. And she also was a little tone deaf to the way that her willfulness would, affect people sort of in concentric circles out from her own magical thinking. And that, to me, was really representative of the way that folks in Italy reacted to Amanda, and then transitively the way that the press viewed her through the Italian lens, and then through the British, and then back here in America. The employment of the Amélie device was much, I think that's where our fiction lived.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. I want to end talking to you guys about finding these two actors to take on. I said this on the last panel too, that certain stories don't work if the two people don't work, and if the tension between them doesn't work. I can't imagine two people have a better tension, this push and pull, this rooting for both of them, even though you're not, than Jude Law and Jason Bateman. What was it about them, and when did you guys realize that they were the right people for this, when you guys were in the process of it?
Pretty early on, we had met with Jude. I wrote and Kate produced a movie that we had made with Jude called The Order that came out last year, and as we were starting to talk to Jude about that project, we started to talk to him about this world and these characters. And there's a restaurant in New York called the Spotted Pig that was very inspirational to the show, and the head of the person who founded that restaurant was also a ex-music manager, and Jude had spent a lot of time in New York at that time, and in the sort of the era that, even though the show's contemporary, it sort of evokes this nostalgic time of New York, and so Jude immediately like really understood that sort of that nightlife persona, that idea of someone like Kate had alluded to earlier, who was like, you know, a bit of a showman who was like putting on this act every night, and so and then we had begun to talk to Jason as a director, and Jude actually like is the one who was like, maybe we can get Jason in this role, which was pretty exciting to us because like I think that everyone has this sort of relationship with Jason as, you know, this family man. You know, if you listen to Smartless, if you have seen him on TV since like the Hogan Family, you know, he has portrayed the person who shoulders the burdens of families, and it was very interesting to be like, well, what if he is the burden, and that he had been in this show, this American adaptation of a really good British show called State of Play, and he plays this like really chaotic drug addict, very sort of live wire character. So we knew that he had that in him, and that seemed really exciting. And then,
but we didn't really know what it would be like to see the two of them together really until we got on set. And I think one of the very first days of filming was there's like a really kind of intimate scene between the two of them in a diner that happens like very early in the first episode, and so that was one of our very first days of shooting, and like the like chemistry between them, and like the anger and the love that they like were able to express between each other. Immediately when we saw it on the monitors, everyone was like, whoa, like this is going to be like this, we're like really in for something great here. And so even then we're like, okay, anything that doesn't serve the story of like these two brothers, let's cut it away, and let's like really like focus in on like the dynamic between these two, because
so we sort of saw that like right from the start. They're like, oh, these are our set pieces, actually. Like anytime Jason and Jude are in a scene together and their past is being explored, if they're, you know, it's this seesaw shifting of like allegations and trust and love, and like we're like, okay, that's where the action of the show actually is. And so then we got to had this incredibly collaborative experience with them, where we constantly rewrote everything, like, you know, every day on set. From also like we wrote the last 2 episodes like sitting in the restaurant and really getting to see like who these characters were becoming in their interpretations, which was really unique, and you don't really get to do that in movies.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys all so much for being here. So appreciative.
Thank you.